Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a world so ancient it almost feels like a fever dream. Before start, subscribe the channel. The date is about 6,700,000 years before the present, and the ground under your feet is restless, cracking, shifting, opening into vast chasms that tear across East Africa. You stand at the edge of what will one day be called the Great Rift Valley. Volcanic peaks rise in the distance, their slopes breathing thin plumes of smoke. Lakes shimmer below, catching the light of a sun that feels harsher and more unforgiving than anything you know today. The air smells of dust and scorched grass, and somewhere far off, the deep rumble of a shifting earth makes the ground tremble beneath your bare feet. It's here on this unstable stage that the earliest members of your long, peculiar family line are beginning to take their uncertain steps. You're not in a cozy cave with a fireplace, and no, there's no snack bar serving protein shakes. You're in a land where predators rule. Drought comes without warning, and your best chance at survival might involve climbing a tree faster than a leopard that also skipped breakfast. Honestly, you probably won't survive this, but since this is a bedtime story, let's at least pretend you can. If you're fascinated by the deep origins of humanity, go ahead and tap that subscribe button, drop your location and your local time down in the comments, let us know where in the world you're listening from tonight. And when you finally drift off, remember, the Rift Valley may have been dangerous and raw, but it was also the very place that gave rise to you. Tonight we'll walk through it together, quietly, step by step. You step forward, peering down into the valley floor itself. The Rift Valley stretches like a scar across the earth, a chain of gashes running thousands of kilometers, from the Red Sea all the way to Mozambique. This massive geological wound was born when tectonic plates began tugging apart, slowly peeling Africa open. The crust buckled, dropped and fractured, leaving behind high escarpments, deep basins, and volcanic mountains that will smolder for millions of years. To your left, the land rises into rocky cliffs. To your right, it plunges into flat plains streaked with rivers and dotted with young lakes. The landscape is never still. Even now the earth beneath you is creaking, fault lines splitting wider, hot magma rising in hidden chambers. You sense the instability. This is a place alive with both destruction and creation. And while it might not be the coziest corner of the planet, its mix of forests, wetlands, grasslands, and mountains makes it one of the most tersest environments on Earth. Diversity, as you'll learn, is a playground for evolution. Imagine walking a ridgeline high above the valley. From here you can see mosaic patches of green forest clusters shading the rivers, broken by long belts of grass where antelopes graze. Volcanic cones loom like sleeping beasts, their slopes bare and black from past eruption. On the valley floor, wide lakes glisten, fed by seasonal rains. At their edges, papyrus reeds sway in the wind, concealing hippos, crocodiles, and countless birds. The air is a constant mix of dust storms, rainfall bursts, and smoky haze from volcanoes. One day, this patchwork will be called the cradle of humanity, but right now, to you, it just feels like a land of chaos. But chaos has its perks. This fractured terrain traps water in some places and releases it in others. It brings forest foods within reach of grassland grazers. It creates corridors for migration and pockets of refuge when droughts sweep through. The Rift Valley is basically a massive survival experiment, and you, a small, upright, prone primate with no claws, no fangs, and terrible sprinting speed, have been dropped in the middle of it. Lucky you. As you move closer to the valley floor, the noise of life becomes louder. Insects whine in your ears, birds shriek and flutter between trees. From the grasslands, the distant lowing of large beasts echoes through the heat. You see shapes moving across the savanna, herds of antelope-like animals, early elephants with straighter tusks, and packs of predators stalking the edges. For a brief moment, you realize this isn't some side trip on human history. This is the beginning. The line between ape and human is about to blur, and it's happening here, where land, water, and danger collide. The Rift Valley is not just scenery, it is an evolutionary pressure cooker. Every crack in the earth, every burst of volcanic ash, every stretch of grass or patch of shade is a new challenge. Those who adapt survive, those who don't vanish into the fossil record. And tonight, under this heavy African sun, you're about to walk through the birthplace of humanity itself. You keep walking down the slope, the dusty soil crunching beneath your feet, and the world of 6.7 million years ago begins to reveal its climate. The Rift Valley isn't just a single landscape, it's a patchwork quilt, stitched together by shifting seasons and volatile skies. Some days the sun blazes so hot the air itself seems to shimmer, and other days, heavy rains pound the ground until the valleys flood and the rivers surge. It's a place of extremes, and every living creature here has to adapt or vanish. The air feels heavy and dry on your skin. You smell baked earth, cracked and splitting under a relentless sun. Then, with little warning, storms sweep in. Dark clouds gather above the escarpments, rain lashes the grasslands, and suddenly the parched ground becomes a muddy trap. Thunder booms across the valley walls, rolling endlessly like the sound of distant drums. The water rises fast, pooling into lakes and rivers that swell and burst their banks. Seasonality is the key here. Instead of the steady climates you're used to today, this world swings back and forth, wet to dry, feast to famine. Long dry spells parch the savannas until nothing but thorny shrubs remain, and then months of rainfall restore grasses, flowers and fruiting trees. This unstable rhythm forces every animal, including your early ancestors, to be flexible. If you're picky, you die. If you're creative, you might just get to pass on your genes. Glance toward the highlands in the distance. Those slopes are cooler, cloaked in scattered forests and shrubs that hold precious moisture. Down on the valley floor, life is hotter, harsher, and full of dangerous open ground. Forest patches cling to riverbanks, their shade offering food, safety and a chance to climb away from predators, but those green refuges are limited, and as the valley shifts with tectonic pulls and climate jolts, they shrink and expand unpredictably. The volcanic activity also plays its part. Eruptions throw ash across the plains, sometimes choking life, sometimes fertilizing the soil with nutrients that spark lush growth. You imagine standing here after an eruption, the air still hazy, the ground littered with pumice, the rivers clogged with ash. Yet within months, tender green shoots poke through the gray, and herds of animals return. The Rift Valley is a place of death and rebirth, over and over again. Listen carefully. You can hear the voices of birds echoing across the marshes. Flamingos crowd around soda lakes, their pink plumage flashing in the sunlight. Egrets stalk the shallows, while fish splash at the surface. Frogs croak after rainstorms, forming a chorus that fills the night. Insects swarm thickly, buzzing in your ears until you almost wish for a breeze to drive them away. Step closer to a thicket of shrubs and you catch the earthy smell of acacia trees. Their thorny branches twist like skeletal fingers, and their pods are food for both grazers and primates. Look down and you notice tubers hidden in the soil, fibrous, tough, but filled with starchy calories if you're desperate enough. Overhead, fig trees drop sweet fruit, a rare treat when you stumble upon them. Now picture yourself as one of those early hominins, trying to survive here. You don't control the climate, it controls you. A dry season that drags too long means less fruit, less cover, and more time out on the open savanna where predators see you clearly. A wet season that floods too heavily means drowning risks, mosquitoes spreading disease, and crocodiles lurking in swollen rivers. Every year is a gamble. And yet, this unpredictability is precisely what shapes your kind. The constant shifting between habitats forces early hominins to move between trees and grasslands, to experiment with walking on 2 legs instead of 4, to stretch their diet beyond leaves and fruit. You become an animal of flexibility, sculpted by the land itself. Modern you might complain when the Wi-Fi goes out for an hour. 6 million years ago, your ancestors were dealing with volcanic winters, choking dust storms and droughts that lasted decades. You can almost hear their sarcastic groans echo through time. Oh no, another 100-mile migration for water, fun, and yet without that relentless climate roulette, humanity might never have evolved at all. The Rift Valley's climate, harsh as it seems, is not a backdrop, it's the engine of adaptation. It squeezes, tests and reshapes every creature, and in doing so, it quietly begins writing the first chapter of your story. You push deeper into the valley floor, and now the story turns to the plants. Without them, this land would just be dust and stone, and your ancestors wouldn't have lasted a single season. The Rift Valley, though harsh, offers a surprisingly wide buffet, though buffet might be a generous word, since most of it requires chewing like your jaw is made of steel. The grasslands stretch before you in wide golden carpets. Tall stalks wave in the wind, their sharp edges brushing against your skin. To you, they're just grass. To grazing herds, they're a feast. But for early hominins, not so much. Human teeth weren't designed to grind down endless blades of grass the way zebras or antelope can. Still, within those grasses grow seeds, tiny, calorie-packed nuggets. Imagine your fingers plucking them one by one, shelling them with your teeth, spitting out the husks. It's tedious work, but when hunger gnaws, tedium is a small price to pay. Step into the shade of an acacia grove. The trees stand like watchful sentinels, their thorny branches laced with pale pods. Those pods can be cracked open for seeds, bitter but edible. The flowers, when in bloom, offer nectar to insects, which in turn attract birds, which might one day attract you if you're desperate enough to swat and snack on them. You sniff the air here and catch the resinous scent of the bark, sharp and clean. It's a smell that carries across time, unchanged even today. Farther along, your eyes land on a cluster of wild fig trees. Their branches droop low, heavy with fruit when the season is right. Bite into one and you'd taste sweet, fibrous pulp, sticky on your fingers. But figs are not always plentiful, and when they are, every other primate in the valley, from monkeys to baboons, wants them too. Cue the first food rivalries. You picture yourself glaring at a troop of baboons hogging a tree, muttering under your breath, "Come on guys, share." Spoiler, they won't. Look down at the ground. Tubers hide beneath the soil, their tops barely visible among the weeds. Digging one out takes effort, scraping with a stick, tearing with your fingers, but the reward is a dense, starchy lump. Chew it raw and your teeth ache from the toughness. Later in history, fire will transform tubers into tender meals, but for now you just gnaw and hope your jaw muscles don't give out. Some plants offer more danger than nourishment. Bright berries gleam temptingly, but bitterness warns of poison. A milky sap oozes from broken stems, acrid and sticky, the kind that burns your tongue. Early hominins probably learned the hard way which plants to avoid. Picture a cousin grimacing, spitting out toxic leaves, and never making that mistake again. Natural selection has a cruel way of teaching lessons. Seasonality makes everything more complicated. A fig tree in fruit during the rainy months can be stripped bare within days. Grasses that scatter seeds in abundance after storms are gone once the dry winds return. One month you're spoiled with variety, the next you're staring at bare branches and cracked soil, wondering how you'll stretch your meals. You're reminded that survival isn't about choosing the best food, it's about not starving when choices vanish. This plant life also shapes behavior. Staying near forest edges means easier access to fruit and cover, but you risk ambush from predators hiding in the brush. Wandering out into open grasslands means fewer trees for food, but more chances to scavenge seeds, roots, or the odd carcass left behind by lions. No matter what, you're calculating trade-offs: shade versus sun, fruit versus tubers, safety versus exposure. Smell the air again. Damp soil after rainfall, sweet figs rotting on the ground, sharp acacia resin, and the faint mustiness of swamp reeds by the lakeshore. These scents fill your days and guide your choices. One whiff of fermenting fruit might mean a lucky find, another whiff of acrid leaves might mean danger. Your survival depends not only on what you see but also on what your nose and tongue warn you to avoid. The Rift Valley's plants don't just feed you, they mold you. The need to chew tougher foods shapes jaw muscles and teeth. The need to forage widely encourages longer walks on 2 feet. The need to recognize poisonous from safe sharpens memory and social learning. Every fig plucked, every tuber dug, every bitter leaf rejected is part of the slow experiment that turns an ape into something more. It's easy to take your modern pantry for granted. You walk into a store today and complain if the avocado isn't ripe. Your ancestors didn't have that luxury. They looked at a tuber, gagged a little and thought, "I guess this is dinner." And somehow, by choking down the fibrous, the bitter, and the barely edible, they survived long enough to eventually invent guacamole. The plants of the Rift Valley, humble as they seem, are the quiet architects of humanity's story. Without them, no one walks out of Africa. You pause beneath the sparse shade of an acacia, and then your gaze drifts outward toward the movement on the savanna. If the plants keep you alive, the animals constantly remind you how fragile that survival really is. The Rift Valley in 6.7 million BCE is no calm zoo stroll. It's a theater of constant predator and prey drama, and unfortunately you're more likely to be cast as prey than predator. A herd of ancient elephants trundles across the plain. They're not quite the elephants you'd recognize today. Their tusks angle differently, and some are smaller, straighter, less curved. The earth shakes slightly with their heavy steps, dust plumes rising behind them. You hear their low rumbles, vibrations carrying through the ground, a warning to any fool that tries to get too close. Early hominins kept their distance. Trying to snag leftovers from one of their carcasses was a high-risk gamble, but the smell of rotting meat would always tempt hungry stomachs. Further along, antelope-like creatures graze in the tall grass. Some resemble modern impalas, nimble and watchful. ears twitching at every sound. Others are bulkier, more like buffalo, their horns sweeping outward. These herds are moving buffies. If only you had the tools or teamwork to bring one down. Instead, your role is more scavenger than hunter, waiting until predators leave scraps behind. And predators are everywhere. On a rocky outcrop sits a saber-toothed cat, its canines curving like ivory daggers past its jawline. It watches the herds with unblinking patience, muscles taut beneath its spotted coat. To you it's not just majestic, it's nightmare fuel. A single pounce could end your story in seconds. These cats specialize in ambush, hiding in tall grass or leaping from cover. One careless step too far from your group, and you'd be the evening meal. Crouched nearby, packs of giant hyenas patrol. Forget the giggling scavengers you see on documentaries. These are heavier, bone-crushing beasts, with jaws so strong they could splinter limb bones with ease. They trail predators, waiting to clean up scraps, but they're also bold enough to challenge small hominin groups. Imagine huddling with a few companions, clutching sticks and rocks, staring into the yellow eyes of hyenas circling closer. You'd feel your heart hammering in your chest, knowing your only strategy is to yell, wave, and hope the animals decide you're not worth the trouble. Don't forget the crocodiles. Every time you approach water, danger lurks, just beneath the ripples. A log, floating quietly, could suddenly sprout teeth and snap your leg clean off. Crocodiles in this era grew massive, lurking along lakes and rivers that your ancestors desperately needed for drinking water. Thirst could drag you into fatal choices: sip from a river's edge, and risk vanishing under the surface in a single strike. Birds of prey circle overhead, vultures trace wide arcs, watching for signs of weakness or death below. Their presence is both a curse and a guide. If you see vultures spiraling, you know there's a carcass nearby. Maybe it's dangerous, maybe it's your next meal. As the day heats up, you crouch low, peering into the grasses. Life here is about constant scanning. Every sound, a twig snapping, a bird alarm call, the sudden hush of insects, could mean a predator closing in. You have no claws, no real fangs, no speed to outpace a lion. Your only weapons are awareness, wits, and maybe a half-decent throwing arm. If you're lucky, you'll find a stone hefty enough to fling at a threat. Not much comfort when staring down a saber-toothed cat, but hey, it beats nothing. The competition for food is fierce. Lions stalk the herds, leopards lurk in trees, hyenas prowl the edges. Every predator here is a specialist, finely tuned to kill. Your kind, in contrast, are generalists, not the best at anything, but decent enough at everything to scrape by. Generalists don't win glory, they survive, and in this world survival is the only victory that matters. Now if you're picturing yourself bravely fending off predators with a stick, let's reality check that. Chances are if a big cat decided you were its next snack, you wouldn't last more than a few seconds. Your best move was always avoidance, staying in groups, scanning constantly, and retreating fast. Think of it like prehistoric stranger danger, except the strangers have claws and weigh 300 pounds. There's also the quieter danger of disease carried by insects. Mosquitoes swarm in wet months, buzzing relentlessly, biting until your skin burns. Some carry parasites that weaken you, slow you down, and in this unforgiving land, even a minor illness could be fatal. Tsetse flies whine in your ears, their bites sharp and nagging. Add the constant ticks crawling in the grasses, and you realize predators weren't the only things trying to drain your life. So why stay here? Because this deadly theater is also a pantry. Every carcass left behind is a chance at precious protein. Every fruiting tree draws both danger and nourishment. Every river, crocodiles aside, is a lifeline in the dry months. To live in the Rift Valley was to accept the risk and squeeze what you could out of opportunity. You imagine the nerves of your ancestors, day after day, walking this landscape. Fear never left them, hunger never left them, and yet, by not being the fastest or the strongest but the most adaptable, they slowly carved out their niche, a niche built on caution, sharp eyes, and the stubbornness to keep trying. So as you sit here watching the herds graze while predators stalk, remember you're not at the top of the food chain yet, you're just trying to stay off the menu. You shift your weight on the dusty ground, and now the focus turns from the animals around you to something far more personal, the very first known members of your family tree, around 6.7 million years ago, in this same general region of Africa. A strange little primate walked the earth, or at least tried to. Its name, given by scientists much later, is Sahelanthropus chadensis. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but this creature is among the earliest we can place on the human lineage. Picture it, about the size of a modern chimpanzee, with a face that looks halfway between ape and something new. The skull, discovered much later in Chad, shows a flat face with heavy brow ridges. The jaws are stout, with small canine teeth compared to apes. But what really matters here is the hole at the base of the skull, the foramen magnum, where the spinal cord attaches. In Sahelanthropus, that hole sits farther forward, suggesting the head was balanced on an upright body. Not full-time, striding bipedalism yet, but a start. So imagine yourself down here on the savannah, watching one of these creatures move, on all fours in the trees. It looks much like a chimp, knuckling along branches and hanging for fruit. But when the ground stretches between forest patches, it stands awkwardly on two legs, back slightly bent, knees wobbling, shuffling across the grass. It's not graceful, but it works. This moment, those uncertain upright steps, is a hinge in history. From here onward, evolution has begun tugging your lineage toward bipedalism. You might smirk at how clumsy those first walkers look. They'd trip often, stumble, probably sway like toddlers learning balance. And yet, this shaky new posture offered something game-changing: free hands. Even if not skilled yet, those freed hands could carry food, hold sticks, or wave wildly to scare off predators. 2 legs meant a higher vantage point too. Standing up gave an early hominin a better look over tall grasses, spotting danger before it struck. But let's be clear, upright walking wasn't a magic survival card. It was costly. Standing tall exposed the body to direct sun, increasing risk of overheating. The back and knees, adapted over millions of years for climbing, groaned under the strain. Falls from upright positions meant harder landings, and when predators charged, let's face it, 4 legs were still faster than 2. Still, this new experiment spread. The Rift Valley landscape, with its shifting forest and grassland mosaics, rewarded creatures that could adapt to both. Clamber in trees for figs and safety, then shuffle across open patches to reach the next grove. Slowly, generation by generation, anatomy shifted. The pelvis widened, the femur angled, the toes straightened. All subtle at first, but together they added up to something revolutionary. Imagine crouching in the grass, watching a group of these proto-hominins. They cling to the edges of trees, foraging for fruit, grooming each other, wary eyes, scanning for predators. A few drop to the ground, rise awkwardly, and plod forward, carrying figs in their hands. The posture looks strange, but you recognize it instantly. It's the posture of home. Somewhere in those stumbles, the seeds of your own stride are sown. This creature didn't leave tools, no stone flakes, no hearths, no painted caves. It left bones, and in those bones, a message. Walking upright was no accident. It was the body's way of answering the Rift Valley's question: how will you survive here? For Sahelanthropus, the answer was climb when you can, walk when you must. It wasn't fast, it wasn't graceful, but it was enough. And sometimes in evolution, enough is everything. Now before you get too romantic about it, remember, this ancestor likely lived a short, dangerous life. Predators stalked constantly, food was scarce, and injuries were fatal. But through sheer persistence, some of them lived long enough to pass on their genes, and those genes, unremarkable as they seemed then, are sitting in your own body today. Think about that the next time you trip over a curb. You're just honoring a 6-million-year-old tradition of clumsy walking. You move with the group now, weaving between the tree line and the open grass, and you notice how awkward this half-and-half lifestyle feels. The Rift Valley landscape doesn't let anyone get comfortable. One patch of dense trees gives you safety and fruit, then suddenly it opens into long stretches of tall grass where danger lurks at every step. This constant shifting is exactly what forced those early hominins to experiment with 2 legs. Picture yourself stepping out of the trees. On 4 limbs, you're low, hidden in the brush, but you can't see far. The grasses block your view, and every rustle makes you twitch. Rising onto 2 legs, even for a few steps, suddenly changes the game. You peer above the grass, scanning for predators. Maybe you catch sight of antelopes bolting in the distance, a sure sign that something toothy is on the prowl. Upright posture gives you an early warning, and sometimes that warning is the only thing between you and becoming lunch. Walking on 2 legs also frees your hands. They may not be skilled yet, but they're useful. One hand clutches figs or a bundle of seeds, another grips a sturdy stick, not as a weapon just yet, but as a crutch, a balance tool, or maybe even a deterrent. You wave it when hyenas creep too close, hoping they'll think twice. It doesn't always work, but sometimes a bluff buys precious seconds. The ground itself shapes your stride. In shaded groves, the floor is soft with fallen leaves, branches crisscrossing like ladders. Here, climbing still matters. You swing up a tree trunk with practiced ease, fingers and toes grasping rough bark. The tree canopy is food and refuge both. Drop back down into the open though, and the soil changes, dusty, cracked, littered with stones. Try running on all fours here and your hands scrape raw. Stand upright, and suddenly your weight is spread differently. The shift isn't elegant, but it makes sense. Over time, this in-between lifestyle molds anatomy. The pelvis tilts and broadens slightly to support upright stance. The femur begins to angle inward, aligning knees under the body. Toes, once splayed for gripping branches, start straightening for forward motion. None of this happens overnight. Every slight adjustment comes at the cost of generations of trial and error. But little by little, bodies adapt to a dual world, part forest climber, part ground walker. Imagine the daily journey. At dawn your group gathers in the trees, grooming each other, sharing fruit. As the sun climbs, food runs short in the grove. You must risk the open. A few brave individuals step out first, rising onto two legs, scanning, moving quickly across the exposed ground. The rest follow, carrying what they can. Heartbeats quicken, eyes dart constantly. Every step is a test of nerve. Reach the next cluster of trees and relief floods through you. Shade, food and branches to climb again. This pattern repeats day after day, season after season, until upright walking is no longer an awkward experiment, but a habit carved into bone. It's not just survival, it's efficiency. Walking upright uses less energy over long distances compared to knuckle walking. That matters when food and water are scattered across miles of unpredictable terrain. A hominin that can walk farther without collapsing has an edge, even if predators are still faster in a sprint. Distance, not speed, becomes your strength. Of course, upright life comes with comic downsides. Balance is tricky. Trip over a root while on two legs, and you faceplant spectacularly, dust coating your face. The others probably chuff and grunt in something halfway to laughter. Falls from trees are worse. A broken limb here usually means death, but in the trade-off between clinging forever to trees or risking the ground, evolution bets on risk. Look back over your shoulder, see the trail of your group, weaving between groves, crossing open ground, climbing, descending, balancing between worlds. That weaving path is the line of your ancestry itself, always in motion, never fixed. By daring to stand, however briefly, you've set into motion the first chapter of bipedal life, the signature move that will one day carry humans across the globe. And here's the irony, you don't even realize what you've started. To you it's just a wobble across a patch of grass. To the future it's everything. You huddle now with the group at the edge of a shallow gully, your stomach gnawing with hunger. The plants you've been chewing don't quite cut it. Figs and leaves only go so far. Here in the Rift Valley, survival is about being endlessly creative with food, and your ancestors learned quickly that menu variety wasn't optional, it was life or death. You start with the easy wins, fruit when it's in season, tender shoots and the occasional flowers plucked straight from the bush. They're sweet, juicy and satisfying, but they vanish fast when everyone else wants them too. Famine months come, and suddenly you're forced to dig for roots and tubers. You crouch, poking a stick into the soil, scraping with your hands until you pull out a fibrous lump, bite into it raw, and it's tough, woody, and about as pleasant as chewing on a shoe. You keep gnawing anyway. Calories are calories. Nuts and seeds come next. Acacia pods rattle in the breeze, each one holding hard little seeds. Crack them open with your teeth, and you risk chipping enamel. Smash them between rocks though, and you've got a snack. The cracking sound echoes across the gully, a rhythm that might even have been one of the first cooking shows your ancestors ever knew. Everyone gathers, waiting for the pod to split, then scrambles for the pieces like kids fighting over popcorn. Water plants offer another option. At the swampy edges of Rift Valley lakes, you pull reeds and papyrus, chewing their tender bases for moisture and starch. It's not gourmet, but when the dry season scorches the land, these swampy bites keep you alive. Then there's the risky but irresistible option, scavenging. You smell it before you see it, the musky, metallic tang of blood on the air. Ahead lies the half-eaten carcass of an antelope, abandoned by a lion that wandered off to nap in the shade. Vultures wheel above, waiting their turn. Hyenas sniff nearby. You creep closer, heart pounding. The meat is fresh though sticky with flies. Your hands aren't equipped with claws, your jaws aren't sharpened like predators, but with a sharp-edged stone or even just your teeth, you manage to tear scraps. It's dangerous, disgusting, and full of parasites, but the burst of protein is worth the gamble. Many of your ancestors died from spoiled meat, many more lived because of it. Shellfish and insects add a surprising twist to the menu. At the lakeshore, you crack open freshwater mollusks, slimy but edible, dig into rotten logs, and you'll find grubs, fat, wriggling packets of protein. Imagine the crunch as you bite down, juice squirting out, not Instagram worthy, but definitely survival worthy. Diet is about more than filling your belly, it's about adaptation. The toughness of roots and seeds forces jaws and teeth to grow stronger. The need to chew constantly reshapes skulls, making space for muscle attachments. The hunt for meat, however rare, begins to reshape brains too, since high-protein diets fuel larger brain growth over millions of years. You're not there yet, but the foundation is being laid with every desperate nibble. This flexible eating style, fruits, seeds, roots, insects, meat, is what keeps your lineage alive when other creatures vanish. Specialists suffer when their single food source disappears. Generalists, like you, scrape by on whatever's available. It's not glamorous, but it works. Evolution doesn't reward the picky, it rewards the persistent. And yes, eating in this era came with its comedy. Picture a cousin gagging on a poisonous berry, spitting dramatically, then glaring at the plant like it betrayed them. Or imagine the chaos when two individuals grab opposite ends of the same carcass scrap and tug furiously, grunting until one finally lets go with a squawk. Food wasn't just survival, it was daily drama. So here you are, seated in the Rift Valley, with a handful of bitter seeds, a chewed root in your mouth, and maybe a scrap of half-rotten meat clutched tightly before a hyena steals it away. It's not exactly fine dining, but it's the diet that carried humanity's earliest ancestors forward. One day, fire will make all this easier, tastier and safer, but for now it's raw, risky and relentless, and somehow that was enough to keep the story moving. You wake at dawn stiff from a night huddled in the crook of a tree, and the first thing you feel isn't hunger but fear. Living in the Rift Valley isn't just about finding food, it's about dodging death at every turn. The dangers are constant, immediate, and often invisible until it's too late. Step carefully down from your sleeping perch, and you're already gambling. A leopard might still be lurking nearby, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, tail twitching in the grass. One careless move, one snap of a twig, and your breakfast. This daily dread shapes everything you do. You don't stroll casually here, you creep, you pause, you listen. Every rustle of leaves, every sudden silence in the bird calls, sets your nerves on edge. Ambush is the most common threat. Tall grasses conceal lions and saber-toothed cats. Crocodiles vanish into still water, waiting for the ripple of your footsteps. Even snakes slip silently through underbrush, striking before you notice them. Survival means developing a sixth sense, an almost paranoid awareness of your surroundings. Early hominins who lacked this alertness, they didn't last long enough to pass on genes. Then come the droughts. Imagine weeks without rain, when rivers shrink into muddy trickles, lakes recede into foul-smelling puddles, and the ground cracks like broken pottery. Every step raises choking dust. Your tongue feels like sandpaper, your skin tight and burning. Groups are forced to wander farther, risking exposure on open plains just to find a sip of water. Sometimes they find it, sometimes the dry season claims them. And when the drought finally breaks, danger doesn't vanish, it changes. Torrential storms flood the valley, rivers burst, and sudden torrents sweep away the careless. Mud sucks at your feet, and lakes turn murky with silt. Worse still, these new waters attract crocodiles and hippos, eager for prey. Water gives life, but it also multiplies the threats waiting beneath its surface. Volcanic activity adds another layer of chaos. The Rift Valley is restless. Some mornings the ground shakes, birds scatter, and a deep groan echoes from below. Ash drifts in the sky, dimming the sun to a dull orange glow. Imagine breathing that gritty air, your throat scratching with every inhale, eyes burning. For days or weeks afterward the land lies coated in grey, plants smothered, animals starve, and yet, months later, new greenery bursts through, richer than before, reminding you that survival here is always a cycle of destruction and renewal. Group dynamics are part of the defense strategy. Alone you wouldn't last. Together you have at least a chance. Hominins gather in small bands, keeping close watch while foraging, taking turns staying alert while others rest. When danger approaches, they bark out warning calls or drumsticks against the ground. A united group might even mob a predator, hurling stones and screaming to drive it off. It's not foolproof, sometimes it fails spectacularly, but often enough it buys survival. Still, the dangers aren't always dramatic attacks. Some are slow, creeping threats, infections from cuts, parasites from water, or disease spread by biting insects. A simple injury, a sprained ankle from a bad fall, can doom someone, since it means slowing down the group and kenking easy prey. Nature here has no mercy for the weak or careless. You probably wouldn't survive a single week of this, not with your soft shoes, bottled water, and mild expectations of safety. Your ancestors endured it daily, every day of their short lives. It was exhausting, terrifying, and relentless, and yet this pressure is exactly what sharpened their senses, shaped their behaviors, and forged the survival strategies that echo in you even now. That quick startle when something moves in the corner of your eye, that instinct to huddle in groups for comfort, that stubborn resilience in the face of challenge. In the Rift Valley, danger wasn't an interruption, it was the background hum of life itself. You walk along the cracked earth until the smell of damp reeds reaches you. Water at last. In the Rift Valley, water is the heartbeat of survival. Every creature here, from the tiniest insect to the largest elephant, depends on it, and every shift in its flow determines who thrives and who perishes. Lakes, rivers, and swamps aren't just scenery, they're the stage where life and death play out daily. From a ridge, you look down at one of the Great Lakes, spread out like a mirror under the African sun. Its surface glitters, broken only by the occasional ripple, where fish leap or a crocodile slips beneath. During the wet season, these lakes swell wide, teeming with life. Herds crowd their edges, churning the mud as they drink. Flocks of flamingos arrive in clouds of pink, wading into the shallows, their cries echoing across the valley. For early hominins, the lakes are both salvation and nightmare. The water offers fish, shellfish, and edible reeds, but also crocodiles the length of small cars waiting silently beneath the surface. Approach carefully, and you'll see the reeds sway, papyrus and cattails forming thick mats. Tug at their stalks and you'll find tender bases you can chew for moisture. Dig in the mud, and mollusks surface, shells cracking open between stones. Insects hover everywhere, dragonflies, mosquitoes, midges, and while many are nuisances, some become food themselves. You quickly realize that the lakeshore is a buffet with a catch. Everything edible is also contested by sharper claws and teeth. Rivers snake through the valley, fed by rainfall and volcanic springs. In the dry season, they shrink into shallow channels, muddy and foul-smelling. You kneel, scoop water into your hands, and taste the grit of silt. Each sip is a gamble. Waterborne parasites can sap your strength, bringing fever and weakness. Yet without it, you die of thirst. No bottled water filters, no purification tablets, just your luck and a strong stomach. Then there are the swamps. At first glance they look inviting, cool shade, soft mud, pools of water, but step too deep and you sink, mud gripping your legs like a trap. Crocodiles lurk here too, disguised as logs until the moment they strike. Even hippos, deceptively docile-looking, can charge with terrifying speed. The swamps hum with insects, their constant buzzing a reminder that each bite might carry sickness. Still, desperate groups return again and again, because even dangerous water is better than none. The sounds around water are unforgettable, the splash of herds plunging in, the croak of frogs at dusk, the endless hum of insects. At night the lake surface glows faintly under the moon, and you hear hippos grunting, hyenas cackling nearby, and the sudden violent thrash of a crocodile pulling something under. To sleep near water is to invite unease. Every sound jolts you awake, wondering if it's coming closer. For early hominins, water dictated movement. Dry months pushed groups to migrate farther, following shrinking rivers. Wet months opened new foraging grounds around swollen lakes. This rhythm of coming and going shaped not only diet but also social patterns. Groups learned where the safest drinking spots were, where crocodiles preferred to ambush, and which paths offered the quickest escape. Knowledge of water wasn't just survival trivia, it was cultural memory passed through generations. You crouch now at a shoreline, sipping carefully, and catch a reflection of yourself in the ripples. Behind you, reeds sway and herds crowd noisily. Beneath you, unseen eyes may already be watching. You're never alone at water, not in this valley. Every sip comes with a silent wager. Life, if you judge well, death, if you misstep. Modern you would probably complain about tap water being too chlorinated. Your ancestors, they were grateful if their drink didn't bite back. The Rift Valley's waters, as treacherous as they were, offered something no creature could live without. And so, time after time your ancestors returned, cautious, watchful, stubbornly alive. You crouch at the edge of a grove now, watching the small band you've been trailing for days. If the Rift Valley shaped bodies and diets, it also shaped something just as important, the need for one another. Life alone here is short and brutal, but together, even in tiny groups, survival becomes possible. The band is small, maybe a dozen individuals at most. Too many, and food becomes scarce. Too few, and predators overwhelm you. This size feels just right for the moment, large enough to keep watch, small enough to move quickly. You notice how they cluster close, grooming each other, picking through hair with careful fingers. It's not vanity, it's survival. Grooming removes ticks, soothes nerves, and cements bonds. In a world where danger lurks everywhere, trust is as vital as water. Meals are shared, at least when there's enough to go around. A cluster of figs is pulled down and passed hand to hand, or a nut cracked open and tasted by more than one mouth. It's not generosity for generosity's sake. Sharing ensures no one weakens too much, because every able body adds to the group's defense. A sick or starving member slows everyone down, and slowing down means death. Better to keep everyone at least half fed, even if no one feels full. Watch closely, and you see a rhythm. Some individuals stay alert, eyes scanning while others dig for roots or climb for fruit. There are no guards with spears, no sentries with radios, but the instinct to protect one another runs deep. A sudden barked call, a sharp gesture, and the group freezes, eyes locked on a rustle in the grass. Moments later, a false alarm, just a bird taking flight. The tension eases, but the lesson sticks. Vigilance is everyone's job. The bonds aren't all tender. Squabbles erupt when food is scarce, when someone hoards a fruit or pushes too aggressively into the best tree. Teeth are bared, voices rise in hoarse cries, hands shove, but the tension usually breaks quickly. The costs of fighting too hard are high. Injuries can doom a life, so conflicts simmer down into sulks, reconciled later with grooming or shared food. Even in the earliest days, keeping the peace mattered more than winning the argument. Social bonds are also protection against predators. A lone figure at the edge of the grass is doomed. A group, even armed with nothing more than sticks and noise, can intimidate. Picture them gathering when a hyena pack circles too close, bodies pressing together, voices rising in guttural calls, arms waving, stones are lifted, branches brandished. For a moment, the illusion of strength is enough to make the hyenas hesitate, maybe even slink away. That collective bluff is one of humanity's oldest weapons. Nightfall brings another glimpse of their bond. As darkness falls and the croaks and roars of the valley grow louder, the group climbs together into trees. They don't scatter to separate branches far apart. They cluster within reach, comforted by the presence of others. Fear is easier to endure when shared. Sleep is shallow, broken often by alarm calls, but being together makes it possible at all. Over time, these daily habits, grooming, sharing, warning, defending, weave into something deeper, a sense of belonging. No one in this band would call it community or society, but the seeds are there. Evolution is quietly shaping not just bones and muscles, but the psychology of togetherness. To survive in the Rift Valley, you must learn that you are never enough on your own. Modern you might think of group chats or team projects as tedious, but 6.5 million years ago, group living was literally the difference between life and death. And so, inch by inch, day by day, bonds among these small bands carved a path toward everything humans would one day call culture. Out here, togetherness isn't optional, it's the only way forward. You sit quietly now, watching how this little band of early hominins interacts beyond grooming and food sharing. It strikes you that survival here doesn't just depend on sharp eyes or strong legs, it also hinges on the ability to communicate. Words don't exist yet, but that doesn't mean voices are silent. Far from it. The first thing you notice are the sounds. Short, sharp barks ripple through the group when danger stirs. A low, throaty rumble warns of irritation or rising tension. High-pitched squeals signal alarm, cutting across the valley louder than any rustle in the grass. None of these are words, but each carries meaning. To ignore them is to risk your life. Gestures fill the gaps. One individual freezes, arm raised, eyes locked on a shadow in the grass. Instantly, the others freeze too, hearts hammering, ready to bolt. Another waves an arm toward a fig tree, heavy with fruit. An unspoken invitation, a glare, a shove, or a snapped branch all communicate messages as clear as speech. Back off, that's mine, or follow me, there's food. Then there are facial expressions. wide eyes, bared teeth, a sudden grimace. These flickers of emotion are fast, universal, and vital. One scowl is enough to stop an argument from boiling over. A grin, small though it is, soothes tension after a squabble. Early hominins were learning that faces could be tools just as important as hands or stones. The beauty of this proto-communication is its flexibility, no rigid call for every single event, but a system of mixing sounds, gestures and looks into context-specific signals. The exact bark, tone, or gesture matters less than the shared understanding built over time. Think of it as the prehistoric version of inside jokes or nicknames. Only the group fully understands, outsiders would be clueless. And communication wasn't just for warnings or food, it bonded the group in subtle ways. Soft grunts while grooming, quiet hums while resting, playful chirps from juveniles climbing branches, all of it wove a soundscape of connection. Silence, in fact, was rare and ominous. If the group went suddenly quiet, it meant only one thing: something dangerous was near. Even imitation played a role. One individual cracks a nut with a stone, and the others watch intently, trying to mimic the motion. Communication here isn't about telling someone what to do, it's about showing. Actions become messages, and messages become lessons. This budding system of signals laid the foundation for what would much later blossom into full language. But even now, its value is clear. Imagine trying to live in the Rift Valley with no way to warn your neighbor about a crocodile in the reeds, no way to signal the location of food, no way to ease tension after a fight. Silence would kill you faster than thirst. Of course, comedy found its way into communication too. Picture a juvenile imitating the alarm call just to watch everyone scramble into the trees, the first prehistoric prank. Or think of two adults arguing over food, grunting louder and louder until both realize a leopard has been watching the whole time. Cue awkward silence and a hasty retreat. Communication wasn't just survival, it was also the spark of humor, mischief, and social glue. When you glance back at the band, you realize these half-barks, these gestures, these shared glances, are the seeds of every conversation you've ever had. From gossip in medieval taverns, to your last text message, it all traces back to this: a small group in the Rift Valley, inventing the first fragile ways to understand one another. Your kind's first true survival tool wasn't fire or spears or stone knives, it was the ability to say, without words, "Stay close, watch out, follow me." You crouch by a rocky stream bed now, watching one of the band's older individuals fuss with an object. It's not just food or grooming this time, it's something new. A smooth stone is being turned over and over in their hands, tested, weighed, tapped against another rock. This is where survival begins to shift from raw instinct into the earliest hints of technology. At first glance, nothing looks special, it's just rocks and sticks. But watch closer: a sturdy branch, stripped of twigs, becomes a digging tool for pulling roots or prying insects from logs. A flat stone, heavy and sharp-edged, can crack open a nut that teeth alone could never handle. Even a long bone scavenged from a carcass has its uses: a club, a digging stick, or a crude scraper for meat. These aren't yet the carefully knapped hand axes of later hominins, but they are tools nonetheless. Nature offers the raw materials. Curiosity and necessity turn them into extensions of the body. Picture yourself using one. You find a stone with an edge, sharp enough to slice. You grip it awkwardly, pressing it against a fibrous root until it peels away. The root comes free, bitter but edible. Without the stone, your hands would ache, nails tearing, skin raw. With it, the work is faster. Small victories like this meant the difference between hunger and a full belly. The habit of tool use doesn't appear out of nowhere. Other primates, chimpanzees today, and likely their ancestors back then, also use sticks to fish for termites or stones to smash nuts. But here, in the Rift Valley, the unstable climate and constant struggle magnify the value of such tricks. Groups that grasped the utility of tools had an edge over those that didn't. A cracked nut, a dug-up tuber, a defended carcass scrap, each small success added up to survival. Think of the first time someone picked up a rock, not just as a weapon in panic, but deliberately, knowing it could help. That spark of intention changed everything. Even if it was just one individual, the act spread, others imitated, learned, and carried the habit forward. In this way, culture was born, not art or music yet, but simple, practical knowledge passed hand to hand. Weapons, too, began here in their simplest form. A branch broken to length, waved at a predator, suddenly shifts the balance. You're still small, still fragile, but you're not defenseless anymore. Even if the stick doesn't kill, The noise and threat can buy precious seconds. Over time, the habit of carrying objects, a stick for balance, a stone for cracking, becomes second nature. Imagine the first walking stick that was also a club, prehistoric multitasking at its finest. Of course, tool use also led to accidents. Imagine a juvenile whacking at a nut with too much enthusiasm, the stone slipping and smashing their own foot, or someone swinging a branch to scare a hyena, only to hit their neighbor instead. Tools introduced both opportunity and slapstick comedy into daily life, and yet, despite the mishaps, the benefits far outweighed the risks. The geology of the Rift Valley offered plenty of raw material: basalt, obsidian, quartz, sharp, breakable rocks, scattered across the land from ancient eruptions, some fractured naturally into edges sharp enough to slice flesh. Early hominins didn't yet know how to nap deliberately, but they certainly recognized a good edge when they saw one. Every scavenged carcass, every cracked nut, reinforced the lesson: sharp is useful. When you think about it, this was humanity's first cheat code. With no claws, no fangs, and laughable speed, your ancestors found a way to borrow strength from the world around them. A stick became an arm extension, a rock became a tooth replacement. For the first time, survival wasn't entirely bound by biology. Technology, crude though it was, had entered the picture. It's humbling to realize that every skyscraper, every smartphone, every spacecraft traces its roots to this moment. A small figure in the Rift Valley, crouched with a stone, testing its edge against a stubborn nut. Progress doesn't start with fireworks, it starts with a thud of rock on rock. And so little by little the story of humanity shifts. Evolution still molds bone and muscle, but culture begins to mold behavior. The line between animal and human doesn't blur here, it begins. You follow the group as the weeks pass, and you notice something subtle but important: they never stay in one place for long. Life in the Rift Valley is seasonal, and survival means learning to move with the rhythm of the land. Migration here isn't a grand dramatic march across continents yet, it's smaller, cyclical, and endlessly repeated. Still, it sets the stage for everything humans will one day do. At the end of the rainy season, the landscape is lush, rivers are swollen, lakes brim with life, and forests drip with fruit. The group lingers near the water's edge, plucking figs, chewing reeds, and snacking on insects. Food is plentiful, danger a little easier to manage when cover is thick. But as weeks stretch on, the rain clouds vanish, the rivers shrink, grass yellows, and fruit trees stand bare. The once green valley shifts to brittle brown, and hunger gnaws again. So the group begins to move. It isn't a single bold decision, it's a series of nudges. Someone wanders farther in search of food, finds a patch of surviving tubers, and the rest follow. Day by day they creep along new routes, guided by memory of where water lingers longest, and where shade might still hide a fig tree or two. This movement forms rough circuits, repeated year after year, etched into instinct like invisible maps across the valley. Walking upright suddenly matters more than ever. Covering longer distances is easier when you can stride instead of crawl. The group travels in fits and starts, walking a while, stopping to forage, then moving on again. Children cling to their mothers, older members lag but are nudged along. Predators shadow the movement, waiting for weakness. Migration isn't a clean, heroic journey. It's messy, exhausting, and dangerous, but it's the only option. Migration brings encounters with new challenges and new opportunities. In higher ground, the air is cooler and streams run longer, but the slopes are treacherous and food scarcer. On the open savanna, seeds scatter in abundance after brief rains, but predators are bolder there too. Every path requires trade-offs, and the group learns which risks are worth it. This seasonal rhythm creates a calendar long before calendars exist. Dry months are for scraping by on roots and reeds, pushing farther to reach shrinking waterholes. Wet months are for gorging on fruit and gathering strength. Every year is a cycle of feast and famine, migration and return. The group doesn't measure time in days or weeks, but in the rise and fall of rivers, in the blooming and withering of plants, in the migrations of animals they shadow or avoid. Imagine the knowledge stored in those movements. An elder remembers that one swamp holds water even when others dry. Another knows where the fig trees ripen first after rains. This isn't written knowledge, it's lived memory, shared by watching, following, and imitating. In this way, survival becomes not just physical, but cultural. The route itself is a legacy. Modern you might complain about a long road trip. Your ancestors, they trekked for miles barefoot, carrying food in their hands, always alert to ambush. and yet migration carved resilience into them. Step by step, season by season, they learned to bend with the land instead of breaking against it. One day, long after Sahelanthropus and its kin are gone, this migratory instinct will carry hominins out of the Rift Valley, across Africa, and eventually around the world. But its roots are here, in these small seasonal wanderings. Each weary stride across the savannah is part of the long rehearsal for humanity's greatest journeys. For now the cycle continues: rain, drought, feast, famine. Movement is not a choice, it is survival. You trail behind the band as they cross a patch of open savannah, and suddenly you notice they're not alone. The Rift Valley isn't just the stage for your ancestors, it's also home to cousins, rivals, and neighbors who share the same forests and plains. These other primates are part of the daily reality, shaping how early hominins live, forage, and survive. First, there are the chimpanzee-like creatures. They're not exactly modern chimps yet, but close relatives, agile in the trees, quick to grab fruit, and armed with sharp canines. They make formidable competition. Imagine reaching for a branch heavy with figs, only to have a troop sweep in, shrieking, grabbing, and leaving you with nothing but scraps. These encounters are frequent, and they teach early hominins caution. Never underestimate a troop larger and louder than yours. Then there are gorilla-like cousins, heavier and more ground-bound, feeding mainly on stems and leaves. They keep to themselves more often, avoiding direct clashes, but their presence still matters. They occupy feeding zones, strip plants bare, and remind you that resources here are always contested. Watching them, your ancestors might learn which plants are safe to eat, and which ones even the gorilla stomach rejects. Baboons, too, patrol the grasslands in noisy, aggressive troops. They're bold enough to challenge predators, armed with strong jaws and numbers. For early hominins, baboons are both rivals and teachers. Their alarm calls can reveal danger before you spot it yourself, but they'll also snatch food right out of your hands if you're not quick. Imagine the frustration of gnawing at a root, only to have a baboon stride over and yank it away like a playground bully. Smaller monkeys fill the canopy, colobus, vervet-like species, and others that scamper with ease. They act like alarm systems, shrieking when predators approach, but they're also competition for tender shoots and fruit. The forest echoes with their calls, a constant reminder that you're never foraging in peace. This mix of primates creates a dynamic balance. Each species carves out its niche, but overlap is inevitable, and in those overlaps, conflict, imitation, and learning happen. Watching chimp-like cousins use sticks to probe for termites sparks curiosity. Observing baboons mob a leopard might inspire your group to try the same, though with fewer teeth and a lot more nervousness. Even rivalry has its benefits. It pushes you to adapt, to try new tactics, to find food others overlook. There's danger too in being mistaken for prey by your own cousins. Larger primates sometimes lash out, especially if territories overlap. A swipe from a male baboon is no small thing. The bite alone could cripple you. So early hominins learn to keep distance, reading body language as carefully as predator tracks. A glare, a stiff posture, or a sudden chorus of calls, all signal when to back off. Despite the conflicts, sharing the land with other primates also reinforces a crucial truth: you're not unique yet. You're one among many ape-like creatures, all testing the same resources, all dodging the same predators, all fumbling with the same survival tricks. The Rift Valley is a crowded evolutionary workshop, and only time will reveal which lineage endures. Looking at these neighbors, you can almost sense the tension. Some species will thrive for a while, then vanish from the fossil record. Others will branch into side paths, adapting to niches your ancestors abandoned, and your own lineage, it will inch forward, step by step, outlasting the rest. But right now, here in 6.7 million BCE, you're just another primate among many, jostling for figs, swatting insects, and hoping the leopard goes for someone else. Modern you might imagine being special from the start. The reality, at this point in history, your ancestors are still underdogs, easily overshadowed by louder, stronger, or more numerous neighbors. But quietly, subtly, they're building skills in movement, in diet, in communication, that will one day tip the balance. For now, the Rift Valley is a primate neighborhood, noisy, crowded, competitive, and dangerous, and your ancestors are just learning how to fit in. You rest now at the base of a low ridge, scanning the horizon. The Rift Valley stretches endlessly, and with it comes a relentless truth: nothing here stays the same for long. If there's one force shaping your ancestors above all else, it isn't predators, it isn't hunger, it's change itself. Long-term evolutionary pressures, driven by climate shifts and geological upheaval, are the invisible sculptors at work. Look at the land around you. The rift isn't a fixed backdrop, it's tearing itself open bit by bit. Volcanoes belch ash, new lakes form, old ones dry up, cliffs collapse and valleys sink deeper. Every generation faces a landscape slightly different from the last. What was once forest becomes savanna. What was once a swamp becomes desert. Your ancestors can't cling to any single habitat. They must adapt or vanish. Climate swings are particularly brutal. Over tens of thousands of years, global patterns shift between wetter and drier cycles. In the wet phases, lush forests expand, fruits and shelter abound, and life feels almost easy. In the dry phases, those forests shrink, and the savanna pushes in, exposing you to predators and forcing you to scrape roots from dust. These constant swings prevent specialization. Species that adapt only to one type of environment perish when the world shifts beneath their feet. But your lineage, forced into flexibility, slowly becomes the ultimate generalist. Bones reveal this tug of war. Skulls begin to change, jaws and teeth adjusting to tougher diets of roots and seeds. The pelvis and legs adapt for more efficient walking, step by step moving away from arboreal life. The brain, still small compared to modern humans, starts showing subtle increases, likely fueled by more varied diets and the survival advantage of sharper memory. Remembering where the last waterhole lingered during a drought wasn't trivia, it was survival. Predator-prey balances also exert pressure. Every ambush survived, every warning cry heeded, selects for sharper senses and quicker reactions. Those who ignore the rustle in the grass don't pass on their genes. Over countless generations, instincts sharpen into behaviors, and behaviors into strategies that edge your ancestors just slightly ahead of danger. Even social living is molded by these pressures. Groups that bond, share food, and cooperate endure where loners fail. Grooming, vocal calls, collective defense, all these social habits become deeply ingrained because the environment punishes isolation. The very fact that you crave connection today, that loneliness feels painful, is a legacy of this age when being alone almost guaranteed death. Volcanic disruptions leave their mark too. Ash layers blanket the land, sometimes killing off plants and animals but also enriching soil once rains return. These cycles of devastation and regrowth create unpredictable booms and busts in food supply. Adaptation means riding the waves, enduring the bad years, and multiplying in the good. Over time, this rhythm makes resilience a core trait of your lineage. The irony is that none of this felt like progress to those living it. To them, it was just endless struggle, hunger, thirst, fear, and brief moments of relief. Yet every stumble, every adaptation, every adjustment etched changes into the body and mind. Millions of years later, those small changes would add up to something astonishing, but here in 6.7 million BCE, it's just survival, plain and raw. Modern you might groan when the weather ruins a picnic. Your ancestors lived through climate swings so dramatic they resculpted the land and rewrote survival itself, and somehow through all that, they persisted. The Rift Valley didn't just host the birth of humanity, it forced it, by tearing the ground open, by flipping forests to grasslands, by swinging between wet and dry. It created the crucible where upright walkers, tool users, and social beings slowly emerged. Without this constant stress test, the path to humanity might never have unfolded. Here, under the blazing sun and shifting earth, your story is being carved in slow motion. You're not the end product yet, not even close, but the pressures shaping you are relentless, and they will not stop. You stand once more at the valley's edge, the world around you humming with life and danger. 6,700,000 years ago, this place doesn't look like the cradle of humanity yet. It's just another rugged, unpredictable landscape, but you know better now. Every tremor underfoot, every season of drought and flood, every predator's shadow, and every awkward upright step has been chiseling the first outlines of humanity into existence. The Rift Valley is unique because of how it collides worlds together. Forests patch the riverbanks, grasslands stretch into the horizon, lakes glimmer, and volcanoes tower over it all. Nowhere else do so many habitats overlap so tightly, and because of that, no creature living here could afford to be lazy. Monkeys stayed agile in the trees, antelopes sprinted faster across plains, crocodiles lurked more patiently in the water, and your early ancestors, they became flexible, adaptable, ready for anything. because they had to. You've seen how every part of this place left its mark. The plants toughened jaws and teeth. The predators sharpened awareness and teamwork. The shifting landscapes forced upright steps, nudging anatomy toward walking. The scarcity of food encouraged tool use, imitation and a spark of culture. The climate's endless swings rewarded only those who could change as quickly as the land itself. Survival here wasn't just difficult, it was an education, one written directly into bone and brain. It's humbling to realize that at this stage, your ancestors weren't kings of the savannah, weren't dominant hunters, weren't even particularly impressive. They were small, anxious and constantly on edge, just one primate among many. But they carried a secret advantage, the ability to bend without breaking. That trait, tested here first in the Rift Valley, will echo across millions of years, carrying your lineage out of Africa, across continents, and eventually onto every corner of the globe. Think back over the journey you've walked tonight, the trembling ground of tectonic shifts, the blistering dry seasons, the desperate foraging, the barked alarm calls, the first clumsy steps on two legs, the nervous laughter around half-rotten meat scavenged before hyenas returned. Each detail is small on its own, but together they form a picture. This land didn't just host humanity's beginning, it shaped it. So when modern scientists call this place the birthplace of humanity, they're not exaggerating. The Rift Valley was the crucible, the trial ground, the harsh tutor that prepared a fragile species for everything that came after. You are here because they endured every stumble, every hunger pang, every close call with a predator. And now, as dusk falls across the valley, you imagine the band climbing once more into the trees. They cling close, grooming quietly, eyes scanning the darkness for threats. They don't know what's coming. They don't know they're the beginning of a story that will one day reach far beyond this valley, but you do, and with that knowledge, you step back, leaving them to their restless night. Now the pace slows, you let the sounds of the Rift Valley fade into a soft, distant hum, the chirp of insects, the rustle of grasses, the muted splash of water along a lake shore. The predator's roars grow faint, as though they belong to another world entirely. What remains is the rhythm of breath, steady, calm, ancient. Imagine yourself lying beneath a fig tree, the branches arching overhead like shelter. The air is warm but not harsh anymore, just a gentle blanket, wrapping you in safety. A breeze drifts across the valley, carrying the faint scent of earth after rain. With each inhale you take in the calm, with each exhale you let go of the danger. The figures you've followed, clumsy, cautious, persistent, fade slowly into the background. Their struggles are finished for the day, and so are yours. You don't need to stay alert for predators or scan the horizon for water. You simply rest, knowing the story has already been carried forward. Every adaptation, every lesson, every heartbeat of survival has already brought you here. Your eyelids grow heavier. The ground beneath you feels soft, stable, almost timeless. The Rift Valley, once a place of chaos, is now quiet. The restless earth, the shifting skies, the endless migrations, all of it slows, settling into stillness. You are safe, you are connected, you are part of a story, older than words. Let the last sounds drift away now. Let the Rift Valley slip into silence. All that remains is calm, and the certainty that from struggle, life always finds its way forward. Treat dream.